What's up everybody? In this video we're going to be looking at a recent aquascape that I made. So for this scape it was sort of a impromptu build. My brother had this tank at his old house and when he moved he didn't want it anymore. He had a low-tech setup, or pretty much a no-tech setup with some shrimp, and I decided to reuse some of the plants, some of the bits and pieces that he had in the tank, some of the hardscape, as well as some stuff that I had, because I had some space on a rack which I've made recently. So I thought might as well fill it in with another tank. Unfortunately, this tank was a bit of a fail at the start. It's working out not too bad now, but it's not sort of maintained how it was intended, and it's become more of a holding tank, but I still think it looks pretty good and it's a pretty interesting little build. So throughout this video I'll be telling you what went wrong, because there's a few things that were a bit of a fail, and I think they're sort of good little lessons for people to learn. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. So to start off this build, as you can see, I used a bag of lava stone. I only had a bit of aqua soil left and I wanted to use a sand capping to cap everything off. I wanted to give that a try. And so I decided I'd put a nice decent sized bag in there of the lava stone. I think the lava stone was a bit big with the way it was in the bag, and so I think it sloped up quite aggressively, which made putting the hardscape in a little bit difficult, but it worked out not too bad in the end. So this is where I sort of encountered my first problem. Because I wasn't using all fresh aqua soil, just a light covering on top, I ended up putting in a decent amount of some root tabs. Now the way that these root tabs works, where they're like a big tab of the small balls. So normally these small balls, you'll find them in the little capsule versions, and you can open the capsule and pour them out, but these ones were just in a big joint up clump. It almost looked like a big sort of thimble sort of thing. Anyway, I broke them apart in the bag, and some of the bits were sort of cracked open and exposed, and I think initially this caused a big problem with the bit of fresh aqua soil that I had and all these exposed nutrients. This was by far the biggest ammonia I've ever seen at a tank to start off with. It was sort of registering higher than my API Master Test Kit could register. So this had a huge, big, difficult start, and I think the main reason was because I cracked open these fertilizer nutrients. So just be careful if you're ever doing that, not to crack open them too much, because they can cause big spikes. So after putting down the nutrients, I put down the rest of the aqua soil that I had, just to give the roots something nice to grow into, and to also give a bit of extra nutrients. I like the results, and I always get good plant growth with the aqua soil. Then to cap it all off, I used some sand. Now this is another problem, I think. I used two different types of sand. I used a basic whitewash play sand, which is fine, but it was incredibly clean and very white, and so I wanted to add something to it to give it a bit of color. Now when I was at Bunnings, where I got the sand from, which is just a local hardware, I got a bag of this sort of reddish pinky builder's coarse fill. Now in hindsight this was probably bad. I think what makes this sort of this reddy pinky color is that it's using crushed bricks, and I think because bricks are a sort of cementy product, they have a lot of silicates in them and they can leach a lot of silicates. So I think that this soil or this sand wasn't the best choice. So after putting down the sand, I started to construct the hardscape. With the wood that my brother had in his tank, I wanted to sort of create a triangle composition from one side to the other, and I wanted it to sort of flow and sort of come out from that one side, and sort of reach out with some nice arms. So I think the bits of wood that he had worked pretty well for this, and I did end up adding one of my own pieces of driftwood that I had somewhere around the house. So overall, I'm not too disappointed with the hardscape. I mean, I wish I had a bit more time, a bit more effort, could have put a bit more in to make it maybe a bit more interesting and explosive, but for a really quick, not really thought out tank, I think it worked out not too bad. So to connect the wood together, I just used some liquid super glue and some tissue paper. So after getting the wood pretty much stuck together, I put in some rocks. For the rocks, I use some black basalt. Reason being is I have, a good 200 to 300 kilos because they sold it at a local landscape supplier for pretty cheap. So I was able to get a whole bunch of it for like $40. And it's also an inert stone, so it doesn't affect the water parameters at all, which I quite like. Don't have to worry about the TDS going crazy through the roof and having to do constant water changes and stuff like that. So I'm pretty happy with the black basalt. So I just placed some quite close to the wood to be able to help weigh it down. I wasn't sure if it was going to float or not. The wood had been out of the water for a little while, so I was a little bit worried about it floating. And I glued it all down using the tissue and super glue method again. So after I had all the stones stuck down, I threw around some black basalt gravel. As you can see, some of it rolled right to the front because the slope was very aggressive from the initial bit of lava stone that I put in. But this black basalt was also, gravel was also really cheap. It was free. I got it at a job. I dug it out of someone's backyard and I just sort of cleaned it up and have been using it in some of my tanks wherever I use the larger basalt. After putting in the black basalt sort of chunky gravel, I wanted even more details. So I decided to put in this black, really fine gravel. Now this would be another one of the mistakes. I bought this from Bunnings. They just had like a black gravel that in the shop and in a little bag. And I thought, cool, that's cheap and I'll buy that. Unfortunately, it's not actually a black gravel. It is a white sort of, I guess, pumicey sort of, material. And then they spray paint it or they paint it black. And over the course of the tank sort of running and starting up, it went from black to white. So this could also have been a cause of the really high ammonia in the tank, as I'm not sure what a bunch of, melting paint would do to the tank's water. But as it stands now, the tank seems to be going pretty good. It's all evened out and leveled out. It was sort of running for a long time before any fish went in there, so all the water parameters had stabled out, but it just had a pretty rough start with everything growing in and just a lot of algae and other problems from the start. So after I added that, I added just the one more stone because it felt like it needed something in that back area because it was just a bit open. And then I added some more sand to the foreground because the slope was just so aggressive. So after adding more sand, I added some more of that gravel and just sort of added a little bit more stuff. But it feels like it was a bit better once I added that extra layer to sort of take out the aggressiveness of the slope. And now we're on to planting. So for the planting, I had some plants that were left over from my brother's tank. They were very simple, easy to grow plants. They were this Vallisneria, and then there was some other plants which I had, which I wanted to put in an upcoming scape, but I wasn't going to be making that for a little while. And so I wanted somewhere to put them, to grow them out, and just to get them, you know, so they weren't sitting in containers just all the time. So I thought this was a good spot to place them. But I started off with this val in the corner here. I wanted it to sort of drape over and follow the line of the flow of the wood, and I think it did a pretty good job of doing that. Next, I put in some bacopa. I'm not exactly sure if it's bacopa, but I'm pretty sure it is, and I'm not sure what variety, but these are just some of the stuff that was in my brother's tank. After that, I had some cuttings of some Rotala Blood Red, which I put in, and a Laganandra Miboldii Red, which I put in as well from another tank of mine. I also put in some Pagostemon Helferi that was left over, but unfortunately due to the incredibly high ammonia, it completely melted away, so there is no more Pagostemon Helferi in the tank.
Wait, tell me what to do.
So next I put in some Crypt Parva. Crypt Parva is quite rare here in Western Australia, so I saw it for sale on one of the shops online, and I just bought some because it's always sold out. I've never really been able to get it. You can only get it from private sellers, and yeah, so I thought I'd get a bunch, and I put it all in here just to help grow it out and see how it went. I was planning on sort of spreading it out throughout the tank and leaving some in here and some in the new tank, but I ended up pulling it all out and putting it into the new tank because I think it would have just blended in too much with some of the other plants that were added, and it just would have got lost in this tank. So this was a Amazon sword. I think it's a fancy twist. Again, when I bought the Crypt Parva, it was on sale, as well as this Crypt Mioya, which had a bit of melt. It's still in the tank, but it doesn't look particularly healthy. It's very small. I've been having a lot of trouble with crypts lately. When I put them into a new tank, they just melt away. This is a Crypt Affins Metallic Red, which also melted away completely. So bye-bye. I added some Rotala or Amania bonsai to the mid-ground here. It's a plant that I've always wanted to have, so when I saw it available in the shop, I bought that along with the Crypt Parva and wanted to give it a try. It's doing pretty good in the tank. It's kind of growing a bit slow. It took a bit of a hit with that huge ammonia spike, but it's come back not too bad. I had a bunch of Marsilia hirsuta left over from another tank, so I decided to plant that all around the foreground and the mid-ground. I think it looks really awesome when it spreads out and sort of mixes in with other carpeting plants. I also added what I believe is some Liliopsis brasiliensis. It was just growing everywhere in my brother's tank, so we added some of that as well, and I think at the moment it's looking pretty cool. I like the look of the little clovery plants. It looks very nice. It would be an aquascape without some Java fern, so this is just the regular Java fern. I had a heap of Java fern narrow from another tank, but I managed to find a few little sprigs of this sitting in the bottom of another tank that I had, and it was looking a bit sad. So I thought, you know what, that tank didn't have any CO2, the light was kind of struggling. So I thought I'd pull it out and I'd put it into this tank because this was going to be running CO2 and had a slightly better light, and so I thought it would have a better life in this tank. and another staple of the aquascape. I put in some Anubias nana here. It's just a great plant all around, always looks good, so I just thought I'd throw some in there with some leftover cuttings that I had. And finally, the last bit of plant is, I'm pretty sure it's Liliopsis brasiliensis. Again, it was just growing in my brother's old no-tech tank, and I pulled it out and put it in here, and it's no longer as leggy and, you know, looks like sort of proper Liliopsis now. So now that the tank's been running for a while, I recently introduced my school of tiger endlers. These guys, I started off with 3, and you know, you turn around and, you know, 9 months later or whatever, you have 90. So they're all living in here at the moment. They're doing pretty good. There's plenty of plants and there's CO2's pumping, so the plants are sucking up all the nitrates and stuff really well. The tank, after the sort of failed start, a lot of the plants got pulled out, a lot of things got changed, and then I sort of decided to use it as more of a holding tank and a quarantine. I had some rainbow fish, which are in my big 4-foot tank now, in there for quarantine, and I had a lot of problems with some fish dying and being sick, so the tank got some medical treatment, and also plant storage. I was storing a lot of plants in here that were going to be put in the big 4-foot tank. So after all that, the tiger endlers are in here and they're looking pretty happy. There's also a lot of shrimp. They've really helped to keep the tank a bit cleaner. They sort of, you know, live bearers love to munch on little bits of algae, and the shrimp have definitely helped a bit. And the tank seems to have found some balance. There are a few odd bits in there. There's an extra bit of Java fern, which is attached to some dragonstone, sort of wedged in the middle. That has sort of become stuck and wedged in there, and I'm not, you know, too stressed about it because it's more of a holding tank and not a proper aquascape. And then there's also some Crepidomanes auriculatum. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'll put the name on the screen. In there, that was left over from another tank, and I didn't know where to put it, so I've just put it in here because it's got plenty of CO2 and it's running quite nice. But yeah, so I'm not sure about this tank. With the rack, this is a 60 by 30 by 36 high tank, so just a standard 60p. And it's just a little bit high. There's not much room to fit your arm in the tank. It's in the corner, so maintenance is a bit of a nightmare. So I'm thinking about switching it out for something that's a little bit shorter, because honestly, one of the hardest things with this tank is just the maintenance, getting in and doing stuff. It's a pain being in the back corner. It sort of gets a bit neglected. So yeah, I think I'll probably end up pulling it down, but for the moment it's holding the endlers, it's doing good, it's growing plenty of plants. So I'm pretty happy with it. It had a rocky start, but it's come out not too bad. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing. I'm hoping to make a lot more videos soon. I've recently put together a nice 4-foot aquascape. I've got some other things going on, and I got this rack which I've set up, so there'll be a few more scapes going up there. So yeah, plenty of stuff coming up in the future, so I hope you subscribe and are able to see it. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.